Hi and welcome to the latest episode of the Leadership Lab. I'm Adam Harris. Today I'm joined by David Scott, CEO of New Plymouth Airport. Morning,
Hello.
David.
Good morning.
Let's kick off. You've been here in the region 18 months.
I have.
I'd love to get your thoughts on what you think of our wonderful region.
Well, it's a great question. Came to Taranaki never previously having lived in the North Island, so lived all over the world and travelled extensively, but never been here for any extended period of time. So I didn't really know what to expect. And look, I've loved every minute of it. I've found the area and the surrounding, countryside and everything just magnificent. I've got out and explored it, and I've found the community incredibly welcoming and thoroughly enjoying my time here. I think it's a wonderful, undervalued area of New Zealand.
Great. So as the CEO of the airport, what do you do on a kind of day-to-day basis?
Airports by nature, one of the things I love about them is that no 2 days is ever the same.
Okay.
We have fundamental things that we have to do on a regular basis, and that's to ensure that the facility, if you like, is maintained rather in a compliant manner. We have obviously airlines and other services that use the facility, and there are quite strict rules around that. So there are things that we do on a daily basis to ensure that that's happening. Those include things like runway inspections and all the nitty-gritty things around managing a building. Those are really the easy parts. The other things that we do on a daily basis is looking at what other opportunities we have as an organisation to not only maintain our existence in a profitable and meaningful way, but also look at what way we can diversify our income. If you look at airports all around the world and even in New Zealand, airports have their core business, which is obviously an airport.
Yep.
But the auxiliary income that we get from other areas such as hangar businesses or other businesses that might be on our land,
Yep.
are also very important. And at the moment, New Plymouth is growing that side of things. We're still very much in our infancy.
And
so that's a big focus.
Is there any of those up-and-coming things that you're able to kind of share?
Yeah, sure. We're looking at the moment, so the single biggest one that we're looking at the moment is actually a solar farm installation. And that'll do a couple of things for us. It'll provide a little bit of non-aeronautical income. We will generate our own electricity for use, but also put some back into the grid.
Yep.
And it'll also help us with our environmental challenges that are being faced by the aviation and transportation industry at the moment. We actually think it's like the first part of a fairly exciting development for us. Solar and clean green energy.
Yep.
We also have a bit of land out there, and a lot of land at airports can't be used for much at all. But we want to see what type of businesses we might be able to attract by saying, hey, we can provide you with nice clean green energy.
Yep.
Why don't you come out and join us? So those are one of the things that we're looking at the moment. The other one is it's a real challenge for us. We are restricted by zoning rules what we can actually do on our land. So we're looking at what those restrictions will allow us to do, and have to be quite careful what I say there. But things like building more hangars for aircraft users is a potential for us. Buying some of the existing facilities that are there, there's a better return on the investment there. So it's trying to shore up that non-aeronautical side of the business.
And is that one of the things that excited you about the role? Because I know that you've got a bit of history with kind of strategy development and implementation.
Yeah.
Is that something that was of interest to you?
Look, I think so. I think what COVID has done is shown airports that the never-ending stream of airline business can actually come to a grinding halt. I think that has given everybody a massive wake-up call. So yes, that is part of the kind of enticement for me.
So when you mentioned COVID, am I right that you were at Nelson Airport when?
Correct.
So Talk to us about that situation then. So from an airport's perspective, all of a sudden, all flights are grounded. How and what were you doing kind of on the ground?
Yeah, so I think the best way to explain it is a little bit of a story. I was in Central Otago. I'm from Otago originally, in mid-February of 2020. And if you remember back then, that was just when COVID was starting to get its momentum, if you like.
Yeah.
And I noticed that there was a heck of a lot less people, particularly from the Asian market in Central Otago. And I came back to work, and people were mentioning it. All the businesses were down there, and they were quite, quite worried about the fact that the numbers had dropped off as much as they had at that point. So I came back to Nelson and just having a discussion with the CEO there at the time, saying, look, you could tell there was.
It was brewing. It felt as if it was brewing.
Yeah, you did. And we've been through this before. Mm-hmm. You've seen SARS, we've seen the bird flu, swine flu. They've all been quite serious scares, and they actually have had massive impacts. People, I think, have lost a bit of perspective on just how damaging those were to the airline and the aviation industry. And so we in our infinite wisdom thought, right, we'd better do a reforecast of how things are looking. So we looked at, say, 70% of our business rather than 100% of our forecast, and spent probably a week and a half, rejigging everything to 70% of our revenue.
Yeah.
Within a month, it was at zero. So unprecedented. We really had to act on the fly. I was actually the manager of. Yeah. Gosh, there wasn't much flying, that's for sure. So Air New Zealand actually has a base in Nelson, so they parked all of their Q300 aircraft on the tarmac there.
Yeah.
So there was 23 or 24 aircraft parked. I was the infrastructure and operations manager at that point. We had a number of significant capital projects that were planned. That was going to be my job. I sat down with my CEO and we went through the next year of planning, and it was pretty obvious that I didn't have a job. There was nothing for me to do at that point. And so we both made that difficult decision at that point that I was the one to go. So yeah, not easy at all. Tough times. We didn't know how the industry was looking. Personally, it was obviously a difficult time. Being made redundant, it's never an easy thing for anybody. But within probably a year or so, things had started to sort of pick up again, and the opportunities were coming, and
this came up.
Here I am.
And here you are.
Yeah. So very lucky.
Great. So David, growing up in Otago, I'd love for you to tell me, because you've been in the aviation industry a long time, what's your first memory of kind of like going, actually, this is what I kind of want to get involved in?
My father was involved in central government and used to travel frequently from Oamaru. And we had one flight that left in the morning and one flight that returned during the day. And he'd be gone sometimes for 2 to 3 days at a time. So my mother used to take me out to the airport as a young child to pick Dad up. And we were very close. I was very close to my father. And so I remember clearly going out to the airport, and tiny little shed in those days, but looking out into the cold winter's evening and seeing this light out in the distance appearing, and knowing that was that aircraft coming in, and feeling that sense of, excitement and joy. I feel it now, actually, even talking about it. And the aircraft would land, you'd smell that aviation fuel, and then Dad would get off the flight, and he'd invariably bring something exciting after being away for a few days. But it was always great to see him. And so for me, it kind of was never about, funnily enough, never about the aircraft and never about aviation. It was about what it was doing, and that was the connecting of people and the returning of loved ones and those sort of things. And I went through university and studied marketing and economics, and always had this in the back of my mind. I think had a hankering for aviation and for airports.
Yeah.
You know, my parents unfortunately divorced, and the way I would get to one parent obviously was via an aeroplane.
Yeah.
So I think I always had that feeling of excitement and anticipation of when I was flying, and was always in tune with what was happening. And that's never gone away. I still feel exactly the same. And I've worked in some of the biggest airports in the world, and I've worked in smaller ones, and it's exactly the same. On a daily basis, I have this bird's eye view of the arrivals and departures area at New Plymouth Airport, and on a daily basis you see incredible scenes.
Do you literally have a bird's nest
I
view?
do, yeah.
Cool.
And I love it. And sometimes I find myself just glancing down and seeing, you know, grandkids holding up a sign for their grandparents coming back out. And it's like, that's why it's important that we're doing what we're doing.
So let me just pick up on that then, because you said that you've worked in a number of different airports.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, you know, people going, people coming, but sometimes the energy and the experience is different. So I'd love for you to kind of share, you know, from behind the scenes, from a leadership perspective, what is the role of a leader within an airport, and how do you ensure that you create the right environment?
And I think that leadership is setting an example, but also listening to the challenges of the people that you're leading. Airports are incredibly busy logistical operations, and it requires a number of very small things to be done very, very well in order for things to operate, you know, at all. On a really good day, a top airline in the world will be around the 85 to 90% on time. And if you're talking about a big international hub, 90 to 95% of those people will make their connections on time. So right off the bat, 10% of the time you're dealing with an unideal situation.
Yeah.
So that means that you've got staff who have to deal with difficult problems on any given day. And you see it all the time. I've just focused on some of the good things. There's also some real challenges for people. For me, the leadership has always been about supporting your staff and your teams through those challenging times, but also making sure that they're fully aware of the responsibility they've got. I think airports and flying on an airline are one of the more unusual things people do. There's not many times when you walk into an environment where you're totally powerless of what's going to happen. You hand over your luggage, you get onto a cylinder, and you're being told what to do at every step along the way, and then you sit on something that actually defies gravity, and you do it all without even really thinking about it. And there's an enormous amount of trust that goes into that. So when that trust gets broken by a delay, or your bag's getting lost, or you're not making your connection, there's zero you can do about it. You have to rely on somebody else to fix that problem for you. So that's why I think you see a heightened level of anxiety and stress in airports than you do in any other area. So you've got people who have to manage that. You've got staff who have to be the front line who deal with those types of challenges. So it's very important that they feel, one, they've got the tools to do their job. Two, that they feel supported by their managers. And three, that they understand that they've got people who they're dealing with who are in, most of the time, extremely stressful situations.
So you've worked at a number of large organisations within the aviation industry. Where is the favourite place as you reflect on your career? Where did you have the best time?
I think probably for me, I started my career in America, and for me, being from Otago, I often used to think, wouldn't it be great to go back to New Zealand and work for Air New Zealand and manage Queenstown Airport? How good would that be? That was sort of where I grew up, Wanaka, Queenstown, North Otago. We had a home in Central Otago in those days, so I spent a lot of time there, and I got to do that, and it actually was as good as I imagined it would be. It was again a place that was in incredible growth mode. So we were starting to get the international flights coming in from Australia during that time. And Air New Zealand at the time was run by Mount Cook Airline, which was in Queenstown, which was a subsidiary but flew under the Air New Zealand brand. And we ran this little airport that very quickly became a major international airport. So that was a very fulfilling time. But it's trumped probably by the 4 years I spent in Dubai.
With Emirates?
Yeah. That was remarkable. And
because?
Look, we were dealing essentially with the United Nations of airlines. We had something like 126 destinations all over the globe, all connecting with each other on a daily basis. So you'd be walking down a concourse and seeing a flight going to Stockholm, to New York, to Nigeria, anywhere, and you'd see the different groups of people getting on those. It was absolutely phenomenal, fascinating.
David, let's talk about the airport and the fact that it's an award-winning airport. I'd love for you to just kind of share some of the insights and what's that meant, first and foremost locally, but then from a national basis as well.
So the awards that have come have been a direct recognition that there was collaboration between local iwi, Puketapu Hapu in particular, and at the time the New Plymouth District Council to come together and collaborate on the design and the build of the airport. At the end of the day, an airport has to be very functional, have people come and go in an efficient and smooth manner, and if you can do that with something a bit different, then great. To the credit of both the MPDC at the time and Puketapu Hapu, they took the brave decision to do something not just a bit different, but something pretty remarkable. And I think that has been recognised, and it's been recognised not just domestically but also internationally, and that story has resonated with people when they see what is actually capable. When people are willing to actually listen and learn and compromise. Look, the easy thing to do would have been able to build a big tin shed that did exactly what the airport does now. Now we've got a space that is pretty special, that when people who have been away for a long time and come back and see loved ones like we've seen a lot of in the last couple of years, they're doing it in a really, really remarkable place. And I think that's tremendous. I mean, obviously I'm biased because I have an affinity for airports, but when those memories are made in a special place, how good.
I travel a bit as well, and I fully appreciate that as well. And then you come back into the building, and then you walk outside and you see the Monga. It's I feel home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you a question about the future. Is there any plans for more flights coming in to and out from other destinations?
So we projected before COVID-19 a fairly steady growth path. That's been knocked off its rails. It'll be a year or two before it gets back to those levels, and that then continues. We are a bit limited on what type of aircraft we can have because of our runway length in New Plymouth. We are hoping at some point that we can realign the runway to allow for larger aircraft to come in, but that, to be fair, that's a fair way off, and there's probably not the market for that at the moment. We're at a really interesting time in aviation at the moment. We're seeing different types of innovation, whether it be electric or hydrogen, in development. There's nothing there yet, There's a few concept designs, but there's nothing really there yet. So those are the types of things that we are looking at future-proofing ourselves for in the master plan that we're undertaking at the moment. That'll give us a bit of a 10-year view and a bit beyond, to be fair, of what's coming up.
Just want to go on a different path now, is to ask you about kind of the coaches and the mentors that you've had through your leadership journey. Is there one or two people that stick out? Who were they, and how did you come to work with them?
There's been a couple. I had a manager when I first started working in the States. I worked for a company called Southwest Airlines. And Southwest Airlines are a well-known organisation for its, not only for its success, but also for its culture and for its sort of leadership style, if you like. And I had a manager there who I think saw a bit of potential in me and gave me some opportunities. When I first worked for Southwest, I went in thinking that I could walk into a mid-manager's role or something a bit similar, and they said, we'd love to have you. We think you're really well qualified. Now get in line and start loading some bags.
Yeah. Was that a bit of a wake-up call?
No, it wasn't, because I worked out very quickly that's the way they worked.
Yeah.
If you want to work for them, you start at the bottom and you work your way up. I was probably a little bit older than the majority of people who were doing the same thing, but it was a phenomenal way to learn the business from the ground up, and you progressed your way through. And this particular person saw that I had a bit of potential and was able to sort of help guide me through those things. But he also gave me a few sort of little nuggets along the way around leadership. Airline and aviation management is all about managing crisis, because, as I mentioned earlier, you really only need it when things go wrong, right? So he said to me, always be the calmest in the room, because everybody's going to be looking for you to set the tone, particularly when you're in charge. And that's some advice that I've taken throughout my career. And I've been through some challenging times both in Queenstown and Dubai. We had some massive disruptions and all sorts of challenges from an operational perspective, where things do get very, very stressful.
Yep.
And remembering those lines, always keeping calm and setting the tone from the top is something that I've always carried through with me. When I was in Dubai, I met an individual very similar, really. We had a significant disruption happen, and I'm talking about 50,000 people being disrupted on their flights.
Okay.
And I was quite alarmed at how little process there was in place. So I marched into my senior vice president's office and said, I think we could do a bit better than this. And he said, great.
Go and do it.
You've got a new job.
Yep.
And he gave me the opportunity to work in sort of the disruption management area from a product development perspective.
Yep.
That actually changed the way Emirates do a lot of their business now.
Wow.
Won't take too much credit there. I was able to sit back and tell people how I think how it should be done.
Yep.
And then let the IT people work their magic. But it was a phenomenal opportunity, and again, it was somebody who was able to guide me through those sort of processes as well. So yeah, there'd be two that sort of stick out. I'm sure there's more, but yeah.
So just going back to that kind of crisis management piece, from a fundamental level, what was more important? Was it the technology, understanding of the situation, or the communication through to kind of the stakeholders?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. Technology was way behind.
Yeah.
But the leadership side of things was also, in my opinion, missing. People were afraid to make decisions because they felt if they made the wrong decision, they might get in trouble. Now, in my experience, that's a recipe for absolute disaster. You have to have people confident and comfortable in making a decision, because if they don't, then nothing gets done. Yeah. But if they get it wrong, then okay, let's just learn from it. As long as it's not negligent or on purpose, then surely there's no issue. That was a little bit different in some of the areas that I worked.
Yeah.
So that was something that I tried to help sort of install, I guess, is give people the confidence and the comfort that they could make decisions themselves. And if it turned out to be the wrong decision, then we'd review it afterwards and see if we could learn from it. Sounds pretty simple, not always the way it's been done in the airline industry.
Yeah, and I suppose you're dealing with high pressure situations.
High pressure, but also quite often, there's money involved.
Yeah.
You might be talking about transferring a person onto another flight that has a fare difference and all those sort of things. So people are always a bit cautious. Southwest had a very interesting philosophy. Their rule, if you like, around dealing with situations like that was do the right thing. And that was an official policy.
Yeah.
So that totally empowered employees. So that's kind of where I grew up. And I often go back to that. If you're doing the right thing, you think you're doing the right thing, then it normally is, then go ahead and do it.
Seek forgiveness, not permission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Some great environments that you've been involved in, Emirates, New Zealand, etc. How do you sharpen your sword now with regards to kind of leadership? Are you a reader? Do you watch TED Talks? Just love for you to kind of share.
Yeah, a bit of all of the above, really. I often find, because I think that particularly LinkedIn provides you with snippets of what the cutting edge type of leadership is now, and you can sort of dig further into those sort of things. So I do use that a bit, and so I do see quite a few TED Talks that I find inspiring sometimes. I'm often quite baffled when I hear about some of the terrible management decisions that people make, because I'm just wondering what they're looking at. Because some of it now is just so obvious and so prescriptive. It's not hard. It's being empathetic and learning from your teams and doing those sort of things is really what it's all about. I've got a really good supportive board that when I first became CEO, I felt like I needed to really ask permission all the time, because I'd always had somebody that I reported to. Now that I'm a leader, I don't need to ask them permission. I need to tell them what I'm doing and give them the reasons why I'm doing it, within reason, of course. But that's how I see that style of leadership working. Set the boundaries and then let somebody do their job.
A couple of last questions. How would you describe yourself as a leader in 3 or 4 words?
3 or 4 words. Empathetic, strong with a little bit of a caveat, a listener, and decisive.
Awesome. Last question. If there was a book on your life up to this point, what would the title be and why?
Goodness me, a book. My life so far. It's been an interesting ride so far.
Okay.
I think I don't think the journey's over yet. I've never really looked at somewhere as being home. I've always looked at what's next. That's beginning to wane a bit, to be fair, but I still feel like I've got a lot left to achieve.
Great. David, thank you very much for joining me on the Leadership Lab. I'm Adam Harris. I'm your host. Until next time on the Leadership Lab, bye for now.